have read the speaker of the evening's introduction and the program. You may have read that Desmera's, one of her items was Ella Baker. You probably don't know that Ella Baker actually was raised here in Warren County, well, this is Vance County, but she was raised, well, not in Warren County, she was in Halifax County, because she was in Littleton. She was also one that started SNCC, which is the Students Nonviolent Committee, Coordinating Committee. I better put my glasses on so I can read. You probably read that Desmera has earned many awards, honors, recognitions, and 2 degrees. She has represented the United States well in countries in Africa, Asia, and South America as a social justice activist. She has appeared in many magazines, newspapers, and television programs. She sits on many boards and collaborates with many organizations. She's played a major role in the formation of a workers' union, and that is outstanding. Because in North Carolina, which is a right-to-work state, and we know what that means, you have no rights, you can work, but you have no rights, which means that you still get low salaries, maybe health care, and maybe a pension, which is not right. Just remember, unions is what built this country. Unions is what took us out of poverty. And unions will help. Well, first, let me congratulate her for the work that she did. Because again, unions is what picked us up out of poverty and brought us into the middle class. And I want to thank you for doing that. So, ladies and gentlemen, Desmera Gatewood. Oh, wait. Before I forgot, that's why you have to have young people. Desmera is the daughter of Dr. Curtis Gatewood, who's our musical assistant back in the back, and the daughter of Odessa, who's our president. But before I say that, I invited her because I know her. I'm one of her volunteers, and I knew her before. I was working for her before I knew she was the daughter of the 2 Gatewoods. So thank you for being here, and give them hell. All right.
audience right here, because I have people in here that I will continue to see again for the rest of my life. So I have my mother is here, Desmera Gatewood, and so you know how some people are embarrassed to stand up. She's embarrassed if you don't tell her to stand up. So come on, stand up. I'm joking. But she will. I know you didn't forget to mention it. I'm just kidding. She's not going to do that because it's going to come naturally. So I would never know. But I also have my brother Tony Hawkins and his daughter. And his daughter Joyce, and so they told my mom, they were like, Grandma, please don't make me stand up. So I won't make her do it, I'll do it. Go ahead, Joyce, stand up. Y'all give Joyce, Lachey Hawkins, and Anthony Hawkins a hand. Come on, Tommy. All right, that's my brother. All right. And so and my father, he's got the blue glitter on. He doesn't even have to stand up. You can turn around. But you can stand up if you want to, but he probably wants to sit down. He's been standing up at the DJ booth all this time. All right, that's the jacket he wore the second time we went to go see the Michael Jackson movie. I didn't know that was a secret. Put it on Facebook. Okay, I'm joking. All right. But I got a lot of other family here. I got aunts and uncles that are here, people that have been born and bred in this fertile soil that we know as Warren County, or as some people call it, the county. I want you all to know that through a lot of research, through things I learned after I left home, experiences that I've had in organizing, I have never been more proud than to be a descendant and a daughter of Warren County than I am now. This place is full of so much history. And when I say it's full of so much history, people are thinking about, well, not that many things necessarily happen in Warren County, but so many things happen because of Warren County that we can say that Warren County may have been the most consequential area in North Carolina when it comes to shaping and influencing Black Southern politics. If you didn't know that, hopefully by the end of this, I would have done my job. Now, the theme tonight is standing strong. Did I get that right?
Yes.
And I think another thing about standing strong, that's not a singular thing. If you're just standing strong by yourself, that's not going to make as much of a difference. Mr. Talley talked about unions, and he talked about Ella Baker. And if you look at the theory of organizing and mobilizing, so much of it comes down to the collective. So, as we say standing together, I want to come up with a refrain. So, repeat after me. Together, we stand. Together, we stand. Together, we stand. All right. So we're going to remember that as we go forward, because there are so many different things going on, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later. I work at Democracy North Carolina, so it is my job to literally track and piece apart and teach people about legislation that's coming down that is specifically trying to keep Black people away from the ballot, from the polls, from democracy. So I have to know and understand the importance of together, we stand. All right. So we're going to get it. We're going to get into it. It's going to flow. How many of you in here are a believer? A believer in God? You can make some noise. That's okay. Give it up for God. And so that's important, because that means you're not going to mind me going to the Bible and talking talking about the book of Philippians. Philippians 2 and 3. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or out of vainglory, but do everything in service to others. So that's important because there are many a times, especially in the struggle, especially in the movement, where you may make a certain move or make a decision or show up somewhere and you're really doing it for vainglory. You're really doing it because you want someone to say, I impacted this thing, or I led this movement, or I spoke out on this law, or I did this protest. But nothing you do is supposed to be out of vainglory. Amen. Everything you do is supposed to be to serve God and to make your community better. Otherwise, you haven't done anything. Now, this is important also because when we talk about Ella Baker, she was a pioneer of a concept called participatory democracy. Now, Ella Baker was born in 1903, December 1903, and she actually, a fact about Ella Baker, she died on the same day she was born. Okay. But she was born in New York, and her mother, she was born in Virginia, and her parents were both from Warren County. So her father, he lost his job because they actually built a union, and they worked on a dock. And so once they unionized, even though they had a multicultural union, all the black people were laid off. So then Ella's mama took her and the family, and they came back to their mama's home of Warren County, Littleton, to be exact. So it was in Littleton, North Carolina, and if you ever hear Ella Baker talk about this, she talks about the philosophy that she got from the movement, she got by watching the collective, communal, familial spirit of the people in Warren County. She was one generation removed from slavery. She did not come from formal education when she was developing her movement and political philosophy. If you notice, she didn't say, I got this from reading W.E.B. Du Bois. She and W.E.B. Du Bois were around the same age. But she didn't say that I got this from anything I learned in grad school. She didn't say I got this from a lecture. She said my movement philosophy came from the culture of Warren County. And she specifically named Warren County, and I'm intentionally saying that because sometimes people say Ella Baker is from Halifax because she's from Littleton, and you know Littleton is Halifax and Warren County, but we will set the record straight. She is from Warren County, okay? And I'm going to make the case for why you want to make that case from here on out, because she's somebody you want to claim. Ella Baker ended up going to Shaw University. Yep, my mom went to Shaw University too. You see? She went to Shaw University, and then she ended up becoming faculty at Shaw University. But I missed a whole lot before that. But we're gonna skip forward to the most famous part. How many of you all have ever heard of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee? All right. Well, in the 1960s, there were student movements sprouting up around the South. In Durham, North Carolina, at North Carolina Central University, you had the Royal Ice Cream Parlor City. And it's important that I name that because the ANT4 like to say that they were the first to do a sit-in, but no, it was the Eagles at NCCU. Okay, all right, but we love the ANT4. And so then later, being inspired by NCCU, North Carolina A&T, and other colleges throughout the South were doing resistance, we're doing walkouts, we're doing protests, we're doing sit-ins. And so word started to get around that these young people were kind of breaking away from the traditional preacher-led civil rights movement that had preceded them. They were coming from places like the Youth and College Division of the NWHS and saying, we feel like we're not being listened to. They were saying that appreciate what you all did for the Montgomery bus boycott, but right now, we have a little bit different of a situation, and we need different leadership. So there was a clash going on within the movement. You had these young radical people like John Lewis and Julian Bond and Stokely Carmichael who were coming up, and they were saying, you know, and Andrew Young and Diane Nash, and they were saying, you know, we like what the civil rights movement is doing, but we want to have a voice too. Now here's the problem with that. When you don't have control over the situation, you have to depend on the mercy of who does have control over the situation for whether or not your voice is going to be heard. So it was basically a done deal. Now let's go over to Ella Baker. Ella Baker was not the age of these people, but she was a woman. So because she was a woman, in the NWHS and the SCLC places where she, like her and other women, had basically built the foundation, they were told to be quiet. We don't want to hear you. Or if they did hear her and she pushed back, they called her a troublemaker. So it didn't matter how many chapters of the NAACP that Ella Baker built. Just like it didn't matter how many chapters of the Youth and College Division that the young people in the NAACP had built, they felt like we still are not being respected. Not just because of who we are, but because of who we are not. So what did Ella Baker do? At Shaw University, she convened a group of young people. She sent out invitations. She heard about people like the ANC4 and John Lewis and said, I'm going to do something that other elders will not do for them. I'm going to give them a room. I'm going to give them a space. She booked classrooms at Shaw University so they could come and sit in a circle, and she taught them participatory democracy. She taught them how to talk to each other, how to meet with each other, how to make decisions with each other. And after a series of meetings over weeks, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was born at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina. The most robust movement that has ever happened in this country outside of the mobilization you saw in the 1950s. That came from Warren County. You see what I mean? And let's go back. It's not just that the woman grew up here or that her parents were born here. She said it was the culture of Warren County that taught me how to organize. So your roots, your heritage, your culture is responsible for the Freedom Riders, is responsible for the Black Panther Party, is responsible for the continuation and the profile elevation of the NAACP. Warren County is responsible for the first Black United Nations ambassador, Andrew Young, under the Jimmy Carter administration. And again, none of the people I named were born in Warren County, but they were born out of SNCC. Julian Bond was born out of SNCC. Stokely Carmichael, who later became Kwame Ture, who almost ignited the Black Power movement in this country. He was a student of Ella Baker. So from now on, like I said, make sure you tell everybody Ella Baker's from Warren County, not Halifax County, okay? Because we definitely have to claim that. But somebody say together, together. We stand. We stand. That's the reason that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was so much more powerful, because she planted seeds. Ella Baker was not coming here out of vainglory. There have been decades where people did not know her name, and that was intentional. She didn't want people to look at her as the pioneer or the product of the movement. She wanted people, if they knew her at all, to know her as someone who gave so you to lead. One of my favorite Ella Baker quotes is, "Give light and people will find a way." And what that means is you don't need to stand in front of them. But if you just shine your flashlight or turn the light on, they will be able to find their way. So when I ended up going, I started studying about Ella Baker a little bit, maybe in my early 20s. And so when I went to grad school at American University, I will say that it was very fascinating because I started to hear these concepts. Like, up there they called it widening the circle of engagement. As in, give more people more opportunities to have facilitated conversation and talk and make decisions as a group, and that's going to be the most effective way to impact change. And I was like, they got that from Ella Baker. Literally, they did. The concept of participatory democracy, even when you look at people who, there's another version of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They called it the white version, where Bob Hall came out and he actually founded Democracy North Carolina. But they talked about participatory democracy was the way that we built the movement as hippie white kids. So this language and these ideas and these thoughts are being co-opted. We call it co-opted, meaning when someone takes a concept and they get rich or famous or credited with it, when it usually came from somebody who was part of a less fortunate neighborhood or situation or oppressed people. So people have co-opted as some sort of revolutionary strategy this idea of building a movement that was coined by a woman from Warren County named Ella Baker from Littleton. So we made the case about Ella Baker. All right, so y'all are proud of Ella Baker. I'm pretty sure we can lay that to rest. But that's not even where Warren County's Black history begins. It's nowhere close. You have John Hyman, who was born in 1840. He became the first Black representative from North Carolina, born in Warrenton, to serve in the United States House of Representatives. Like I said, you have so much rich, beautiful history that is baked in the soil of rural Black North Carolina that they intentionally keep away from us, because imagine the pride you would have had as a young Black boy or Black girl growing up knowing from Warrenton. That's where the very first Black person came from who went to Congress from North Carolina. And he was young. He was 35 years old. He went in 1875 during Reconstruction. He left in 1877 at the end of Reconstruction, so he stayed there as long as he could. Now, Reconstruction was an effort after the Civil War to try to get the United States, the Union and the Southern states, to kind of be on the same page. So you had soldiers from the Union coming down and making sure that they could enforce things like the 13th Amendment, making sure Black people could vote, all these different things. So when that happened, Black people started electing Black people. And it should come as no surprise that Black people who were becoming very successful, like John Hyman, in getting elected to these positions, and these were brilliant people. They were straight off the plantation into the House of Representatives. Straight off the plantation, writing legislation about tax codes, about infrastructure. Straight off the plantation. Creating legislation about school, about agriculture. Straight off of the plantation, so you know that Black people did not have to be convinced to vote. Of course I want to vote for someone who has my story, who has my parents' story. And they were so proud know when black people start to get political power in this country. As soon as there starts to be some momentum, some shift, some dignity, white supremacy starts lurking its head around the corner with those envious eyes, envious of black joy, envious of black success, envious of black political progress. So what happened? You had the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan. You had what they like to call riots. I mean, it's really massacres. You have these massacres happening in places like Wilmington, North Carolina. You have lynchings happening all across the South. You have people being harassed and threatened to have their houses burned down if they go willing. All of this is happening only because people were so evil to be threatened by somebody like a 35-year-old formerly enslaved John Hyman from Warrenton, who just came up there to represent his people, and black people who just went to vote. But I'm here to tell you that even though John Hyman and Ella Baker may have passed without seeing all of the things realized, all of the blossoms, all of the things that they planted come to fruition, even though they did not necessarily live to see it all the way through. I'm sure it had to be depressing to be a young John Hyman finally proud to see you and your peers on Capitol Hill, only to know that your election is what spawned an entire erasure of black people throughout the South. And I mean that physically and philosophically, the erasure of black people. So, even though that happened though, even though you had the era of SNCC go by, and you had the Reconstruction Act and all of these different eras of legislation where then, of course, what happened is the Union, they pulled their troops back. They didn't actually do what we're taught a lot about American government coming in and freeing the slaves and making sure that everything was okay. When the heat got hot, they actually pulled back, which put black people in an even more vulnerable position. Because they had Union troops on the street one day, and then they're gone, and it's just you and the KKK. So, what does this mean? How do we get out of this? I mean, this is triumphant, but it's not the most hopeful message that you could get coming into today. But there's a reason that people like me and you are able to go from Reconstruction to Ella Baker to still being able to cast a ballot. And it is because together, very good, together, it's because together we stand. Now, today, in 2026, we are seeing some of the most aggressive, egregious attacks on black voting come out of the General Assembly since Reconstruction. Now, it's intentional that I told you about John Hyman and that white backlash that happened all the way back in 1877, because here in 2026, we are seeing a resurgence. It may look a little bit different. They may have on a necktie instead of a Klan hood. Well, at least not while they have it on at the same time, but even though the presentation may have changed, the desired outcome is the same. And that's to intimidate you, whether they have to do it through a sophisticated system, like voter suppression and gerrymandering and redistricting, or whether they have to do it with more overt means like burning a cross in your yard. But by any means necessary, this country. But I'm going to tell you about somebody else in Warren County. Somebody who in the 1960s and 70s and 80s used to go door to door with Floyd McKissick Sr.'s children. Somebody who used to register people for the NWHS and register them to vote. Somebody who was protesting at the landfill when Governor Hunt was trying to dump toxic waste near residential areas in Warren County. His name was Willie Burnett Sr.
All right.
My grandfather. And it's not just one of those things. You know how sometimes your family will tell you nice stuff about your family just because they're your family? And, you know, they'll just tell you, like, you know, your granddaddy, blah, 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 but it may or may not be true. You know what I mean? They just might kind of exaggerate. But it wasn't even my family that reiterated and doubled down on that. I went to Floyd McKissick Sr.'s daughter's birthday party because she was my advisor in college at NCCU. Her brother, Floyd McKissick Jr., was there and pulled me aside and he said, "Let me tell you about your granddaddy, Willie." And he ran down everything I just ran down. And here I am talking to Floyd McKissick's son. So if anybody knows what an activist is supposed to look like, and he's telling me about my grandfather, who I had heard murmurs, but I did not know that he had done that much for the foundation of democracy. And he's another example about how Warren County has mobilized. I don't know if you all know, but Warren County is considered the bedrock of the environmental justice movement. Right. Nobody, so, you know, when you see people out here talking about climate change and green stuff and sustainability and solar panels and electric cars and clean air and global warming, nobody was talking about the land and the environment until people in Warren County started protesting about toxic waste in the 1970s and 80s. They were not using that language. Warren County was the first place that brought cameras and newspapers and scholarly journals and academics to understand that there was a such thing called environmental racism. That's right. The idea that you could use the land to kill people. You could use their surroundings. You could pollute their air. And then it was because of that case that people started looking at other examples across the country of environmental racism. They started looking at how certain factories that were emitting certain smoke and gases were placed in urban areas near black residential areas. They started looking at how in places like the PD River, where a lot of black and brown people use that as a water source, they were not filtering that water. Things like this. They were starting to see this environmental racism thing is real. And it was because of Warren County. So, as I mentioned today, in 2026, we now see a backlash that I like to say was already snowballing, but ever since 2008, this country and all over the South has seen some egregious, aggressive attempts to stop black people from voting. A lot of other legislation too. To kill our chances in education, to of course keep the criminal justice system unfair, to make sure that our healthcare system is still inaccessible. We know that. But they specifically have started doing, have not stopped doing everything they can to stop us from voting. And it's gotten so sophisticated. How many of you all know you need to bring an ID to the polls? Okay, now you know, so you raise your hand. You need to bring an ID to the polls. You didn't need to bring an ID to the polls 3 years ago. So why is it that the older you're getting, the more complicated the process is becoming? It used to be that you could go vote on Sunday. Y'all remember souls to the polls? You ever heard that? You would leave from church and go vote. Very convenient. And we still have to go back and forth to keep Sunday voting legal. Right now there's a bill to eliminate Sunday voting. Why would you want to eliminate Sunday voting? Because who votes on Sunday after church? Black people. Exactly. They're trying to reduce early voting from 17 days to 10 days. Now, during early voting, you can vote anywhere. You don't have to be registered as long as you're in your county. And if you're not registered, you can go register to vote. So, if you're going to move precincts away from black neighborhoods, which is something they're doing, then the best scenario would be for someone to go vote anywhere that they can. So if you take that away, you reduce the access because you're keeping people who have, like at North Carolina A&T, for example, they've removed their voting precinct just this year. So in early voting, that would mean they could go anywhere that's close by. But if you take that right away, then you're going to make it harder for a population that is already difficult to drive to the polls, and that's young people. We know that young black people are more likely to vote during early voting. Because we know that if you just have one day, like November 4th, and you don't get off work, which most black people do, they work, they can't just take off and leave, or black people may have children that they can't just leave at home so they can go vote. So this is what I mean, it's gotten so sophisticated. They are trying to keep us out of the ballot box. They're trying to keep you away from being able to make decisions about your life, about your body, about your neighborhood, and it is only because of white supremacy and racism. But how many of you know that together we stand? Together we stand. So how do we get over this? So right now, I am the organizing program manager of nonprofit and direct service engagement at Democracy North Carolina. So what I do is I work with nonprofits, like the North Warren Alumni Association. It's one of the nonprofits I work with. And what they have to do is register people to vote and get pledges from people just saying that they will. Those two things. And it is behavior like that that makes sure that we can drive people to the polls. It is behavior like that that actually connects people who are already known and loved in the community with people who need to have someone register them to vote. And it is that sort of culture, that nonprofit collective culture, again, that was born right here in Warren County. So, as I come to a close, I just want to remind you all that Warren County is a place that we will have to look back to if we have any choice of going forward as democracy is being taken away from black people every single generation more egregiously than the other. Ella Baker is the type of person we're going to have to listen to if we want to know how to build communities that can sustain themselves and lead each other in moments like this where we need strong movements led by strong people. It is going to take people like John Hyman, people who at 35 years old realize that they can do anything so long as they keep their community and their faith behind them. And it is going to take the descendants of those people of Warren County, those people like you, your grandchildren, their children, to understand that they have an entire foundation of love, an entire foundation of generations who were successful in so many movements because they knew that together, and I want to say, whether it be Eva Clayton, G.K. Butterfield, Ella Baker, Floyd McKissick, we have a fleet of people that have set the tone for what it means. Andrea Harris, for what it means to be a black person in this country who is fighting for freedom on the front lines of democracy. Thank you so much. My name is Desmera Gatewood.
We skipped a part because between the introduction and you speaking, we were supposed to hear the song Young, Gifted, and Black. Oh. And I think you should take that as your theme song. Because I went to a women's conference in Georgia at World Changers. And Pastor Taffy came in with theme music every day. But the first day she came in, they did her introduction. And then we heard this dum 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 dum, and it repeated, and everybody recognized. So it came out. She's a bad man of the channel. So I like that as a theme song for yours. Young, Gifted, and Black. So we didn't do it with you coming up. So as you go, can we cue that up? So as you slowly walk to your seat, take that as your thing.
All right. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to be young. It's great to be black. Amen. It's exciting to be gifted. And to put all three of them together in one body is phenomenal. So thank you, Odessa and Curtis, for giving us Desmera. Amen. Thank you.